Senate travel, March 3rd. Senator Guru,
Excused?
Senator Landon,
Excused, sorry.
Senator Salazar,
Here.
Senator Schuler,
Here.
Chairwoman Ellis.
Present. All right, committee members, we have 2 bills on our agenda today, and I think it's important for us to try and get through those. Otherwise, we're running up against the clock. And then once we finish with those bills, we have arranged to visit with some appointments for our boards and commissions. So we'll just jump right in. Welcome, Representative Larson, and feel free to introduce who you've got with you and walk us through House Bill 54.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. We'll be talking about House Bill 54 concerning state parks management authority with state lands. And I have Assistant Director Jason Crowder from State Lands with me today, and Dave Glenn, who is overseer of outdoor recreation for state parks, and also recognized Director Westby, who's been very helpful in working with us in crafting this bill. Madam Chairman, I'll just kind of give you a little history that illustrates why we brought this bill. Is in my community in Lander, if you go up, there's kind of a loop that goes up around the foothills, then comes back into the town, and there's a section of school land that sits in there that's attached to some BLM property. There's a lessee that runs cattle in there about 45 days a year, but the citizens of my community love that place. They call it the bus. They call it the bus because there's an old school bus down in one of the washes, and that's where the kids used to go drink beer and hang out. And so, but the people recreate their mountain bike, ride their horses, walk their dogs, do all of that. And as Lander has grown, and as that outdoor recreation, has increased by volume, more and more people use that section of land, and it's that lessee on the state land has been very patient and very kind. But what we're seeing is that there's new trails being created. There's sometimes impact with the livestock. And so those users came and says, how can we better develop that to where we mitigate any problems that might lie out there in the future? And in a conversation with the county commissioners and bikers and horsemen and recreators, we kicked around several ideas, and the question came up, well, couldn't state parks, who's just 2 rock throws over the hill at Sinks Canyon, could they not administer some kind of trail program on state lands? And the answer was no, because we don't have a mechanism there that allows state lands to lease to state park for a recreation special use permit. I might point out that this conversation on special use permits is not new. We have them all around the state on state lands where other lessees exist, but for special uses at certain times of the year, or for specific type of activities that can commingle and be in existence with the existing lessee with their permission. And a lot of those special use permits also accommodate a compensation back to the lessee for a diminished amount of acreage that they might use, or for impact on vegetation or something that would have impact them because they're paying a lease to use that full amount. And so as we reached out to state parks and to state lands, they've been very kind and helpful, and suggested that the bus isn't the only place in the state where we have state lands that we could probably have some opportunities to enhance outdoor recreation, as well provide a mechanism that we could mitigate the impacts of the public on state lands by creating a special use and have control on how those impacts take place by the citizens of the state. So that's really the intent, is to allow the State Parks Commission to enter into an agreement with state lands for specific uses of state properties around for, as lined out. And so, Madam Chairman, I'll just take you through the bill, if I may, and we'll start on page 2, down at the bottom, where or on the middle of the page on 36.4103, where we where it gives the authority for state parks to lease state lands. And then on the next page, we talk about the powers and interpretive service agreements. The State Parks Commission may bring lease state lands into the definition of being able to agreements that can be used for leasing by state parks. And so we can use that agreement to bring the state lands component in there. And then down in D, it broadens the definition of recreational lands leased to facilities to include state lands. So, and that D is down at the bottom of page 3. On page 4, we create a new A and B in this subsection, and A deals, so previously, if you look at section or 36.4.107, it's just one paragraph, and it talks about dealing with leases and exchange and leases of federal lands. For example, maybe there's a Bureau of Rec water reservoir or lake there that maybe state lands or state parks would have a lease for recreational uses with, and it defines how they do that. So we expand that and we create an A and a B, and subsection A deals with state lands and agencies, and the B deals with federal lands and agencies. And in the new A, we talk about how in Romanent 2 on the bottom of page 4 that the Board of Land Commissioners can enter to an agreement with state parks for use of state lands for recreational purposes. And down on line 20, it's really important, and it's to that they would promulgate rules and enforce site-specific rules. So the rules that apply to the bus and the conditions that apply to the recreational use permit or to state parks at the bus may be completely different than maybe a section of state land that the outdoor recreation's working on down in Uintah County. And so there's site-specific rules, and then the Board of Land Commissioners, they promulgate those rules, and then the Department of State Parks will compensate the board for the leases, because state lands is charged with generating the highest value for that property. So we get that. And so state parks will pay for that lease. But then on page 5, we have already in statute there where the State Parks Commission can empower to lease or enter into contracts, concessions, fees for cabins, boat clubs, other and all kinds of lawful in nature. Then we insert in there that they can also use leased state lands as permissible terms of the lease and the rules promulgated by the rules. So it's not, again, it's not the state parks can come in or state lands, and there's a process there, and it's pretty specific per each request. On page 6, down the middle part of the page, we find that the State Parks Department can currently assess fees for use of recreation areas, and this brings in the ability for them to offer up to authorize the sale of permits to use state lands for recreational purposes as authorized, depending, and it would be, again, site-specific to what that recreation permit is. On page 7, it talks about the funds received. And Madam Chairman, if I could go back, because I think I missed a real key component of that. This, and it does go to this, but the funds that they're authorized to use will then allow them to develop the resource and preserve the resource. So if it's bike trails, they can establish those bike trails to where it prevents erosion or damage to riparian areas, that sort of stuff, and then maintain them. And then on page 7, we get here to how we give state parks the ability to use the funds that they generate to preserve and maintain their assets. And then Madam Chairman, towards the end on page 9, section 2, requires state parks and state lands to promulgate rules, and we make it effective immediately on section 3. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. And, I think Mr. Crowder and Mr. Glenn can both would probably do well to put some icing on the cake I baked here.
Perfect. Thank you. Questions from committee members of Representative Larson? Seeing none, let's move on. Mr. Crowder or Mr. Glenn, if either of you would like to add anything, we welcome your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have much to add. He did a great job of developing the bill and proposing it to you. I would just note that we are doing this across the state, and we have a lot of recreational leases in a lot of different counties. And one thing that we look at is ensuring that that's a sustainable situation. We want to ensure that the lessee that we have on the hook has staying power, will be there for a while, and can clean up any mess that may occur. Obviously, these lands are loved and overloved at times by a variety of different people, and may not all have the same view on how that property should be managed. So when we enter into a lease like this, we try to dig as far into an organization as we can to create that sustainability. And oftentimes we ask the county commissioners to be that lessee. And then they sublease to different interest groups, and they can be more on the ground and closer to the situation and handle things a little easier. But we know that we have a lessee on the hook for the long term. This bill does that as well, because there are times when state parks can be that very sustainable, very dependable lessee, and creating this tool for us is very beneficial, we feel. So, Madam Chair, I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you, Mr. Crowder. So I guess that kind of leads me to my first question. Do you need the statute? If you can already do this with state or with county commissions, why can't you do this already with state parks?
Madam Chair, I think Dave is probably a better individual to answer that question. We can do it. I feel the state parks has a limitation here.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Glenn.
Madam Chairman, Dave Glenn, Deputy Director, Wyoming State Parks, Historic Sites and Trails. In statute right now, it defines what a recreation area is, and state lands piece is not in there. And that's the piece on page 2 in red that Representative Larson put in there that kind of says, now we can lease state lands as well and incorporate that in what they're calling recreation areas on that piece.
Further questions from Mr. Glenn? Senator Schuler?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. No, the biggest question I think I have on this is, do you think once you develop, let's just say, for instance, those areas over there by the bus, let's say it's a bike trail or whatever, will the permits and the amount of money that you get in funds you get from the leasee, do you think that will take care of the management and the administration of what goes on over there? I mean, or will it be a wash, or what do you think?
Mr. Glenn?
Madam Chairman, Senator Schuler, I think the interesting piece is, and I was going to mention this, is Representative Larson mentioned that it has to go through a specific process. And I think that's the key part about this bill is the State Lands Board needs to approve this. We need to approve it as well. So what we would do is go through our very specific site criteria process. We look at visitation, we look at the resource, we look at infrastructure, we look at what it would cost to develop this. And then we go, can we do this? One advantage of this bill moving forward is it would allow this area to apply for recreation trail program funds, LWCF funds. This specific area that Representative Larson is talking about, it's a pretty narrow road, and people just park on the road. There's no parking area, there's no restroom, there's no gate. People have to hop the fence. So I don't think I can answer that question, because we would need to go through that site criteria process to look at that.
Follow up. So, Mr. Glenn, along those lines, kind of what do you think is kind of the longer term vision for all of this? Because I understand, like, in the immediate term, like, a lease isn't an easy thing to, not easy, but easier. I mean, do you foresee that some of these state lands could need to be folded in more permanently, though, into like the state park system? I'm just trying to think of like the 20-year plan of what you envision.
Chairwoman Ellis, I would actually defer to Mr. Crowder on that piece, since they own the land.
Oh, how about we go with Representative Larson?
Madam Chairman, perhaps I can give an example of a long-term recreational use permit that I've been associated with that took place, that we put in place for the LDS Church back in the 90s when Governor Friedenthal was in office, for a campsite for when our youth groups do handcart tricks there, and it's on a piece of state land. And we had to negotiate with the lessee and state lands, and that's been in place since early 90s, and it's, I think, a 10-acre. We pay we pay that lease, and we had to negotiate that lease. And one of the conditions of the lease was that it had to cover the anticipated expenses and maintenance of that property by state lands, to where, and so I would only assume that when you go into these, that the terms of this recreational permit for a bike trail, it's going to have to, we had to develop what we anticipated the annual impact would be. Maintenance, we had to put in the restrooms, we had to drill a water well, we had to do a number of those things that qualified us to get that lease and sustain it. So when you talk about long-term over a period of times, that's I think a good example of one that has been in place for a sustained period of time. And then the requirements for the lease agreement. In this case, it wouldn't be of course, it would be state parks that entered into that leasing agreement and maintained and made sure. Now, if they fell short a year because of visitation, that's the nice thing about state parks, is they do have some resources. And at the end of the day, if they're really short, then they come to us with budget requests, right? Whereas if you do it on a biking association maybe, or a volunteer group, that's when the ability to sustain the cost to operate and maintain it become perhaps a little more questionable.
Mr. Crowder, did you want to add anything?
I did. The only thing that I would add, Madam Chair, is that the leasing vehicle that we're anticipating using here is a long-term lease. The minimum's 5 years, the maximum is 75 years, with an average being between 35 and 45. So we're anticipating this being a long-term venture.
And then, Senator Schuler?
Actually, thank you, Madam Chairman. That was one of the questions I was going to ask, but just maybe to go into that a little more depth. For instance, let's just say they have a 5-year lease. Does the Board of Land Commissioners have to come back in and take a look at it? Is it state parks? I mean, who takes a look at it? And then also, just to follow up on that, what if they're not taking care of the land? What kind of recourse do you have for that?
Mr. Crowder?
Madam Chair, Senator Schuler, that's a great question. Each of these leases are approved by the Board of Land Commissioners for a specific term with the ability to renew. We do that as a normal course of business. We also review each lease every 5 years. So currently the board manages 6,400 leases for a variety of different purposes across the state, and each one is reviewed every 5 years. One, for its rent. Is it currently on market? Do we need to adjust it up or down? But two, when that rent is being determined, we have an individual on the ground looking at it, and he can address any concerns about mismanagement or something like that at that time. But that's the point where the board can go back in and address any concerns.
Just to follow up on that, Mr. Crowder. So I just am trying to think through what we might hear on the floor. I mean, is there any concern though that, see after a 5-year lease is up, and then all of a sudden you want to change the terms of the lease, and then all of a sudden we've got kind of agencies fighting with agencies over maybe the rent amount or some of the, you said you're going to maintain these trails, but you're not to our standards. I mean, I'm just trying to think through if there are issues like that, how they would be resolved, and does that bill talk about that?
Madam Chair, I don't believe the bill speaks to that, but in our normal lease management processes, the lease has terms that require performance of the lessee, and that's what we would hold them to. And if there was some infraction to those terms, obviously a discussion is had first to try to find a way to move forward with that. But ultimately, if there is no response or no performance on the lessee's side, then the board has the ability to terminate that. But that's all done in an open public meeting. We have the lessee appear and describe his viewpoint, if that's where it gets to, and the board can make that ultimate decision on terminating that lease or not. And Madam Chair, I can only remember that happening one time, and we just simply lost track of that lessee, and they never did show up.
Madam Chairman.
Representative Larson?
And thinking of an example that you draw, currently in Lander, the Wyoming Life Resource Center has about 300 or so acres of pasture land that is leased to another agency. It's leased to Department of Corrections for grazing for their livestock, and that agreement exists that they have to work through and negotiate, and there are tweaks and adjustments there. So this isn't a new thing. It's been in existence.
Further questions, Senator Schuler?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. Just another one. I think you mentioned something about the county commissioners. I just wondered what their, what kind of coordination do they have with your state lands board or with the folks that are leasing the land? Do they have some kind of input?
Mr. Crowder?
Madam Chair, Senator Schuler, they do if they're the lessee. If they're not the lessee, there's no direct line to seek input from them on trust lands. But happy to have any comment from them. As the representative mentioned, when we enter into a lease like this, we solicit comment and consent from that surface lessee. And if that gets to be a conversation that needs to be broader, oftentimes those county commissioners involve themselves. And we're happy to talk with them and seek whatever comment they have as to that use.
And Mr. Crowder, along those lines, so if a lessee said, I'm really uncomfortable with this lease, they have, just tell me a little bit about their authority to say, no,
Absolutely.
we don't want this.
Yep.
How does that work?
Yeah, obviously, Madam Chair, the board holds the ultimate ability to lease these lands out for a variety of different uses and tries to do so in a compatible way, and inserts a term in their grazing lease that says we may, from time to time, lease for different uses other than grazing. So the grazing lessee is aware that we may come in and do this. But when a secondary user comes in, they're required to notify that lessee and seek comment and consent from them. And if they can't seek consent, then we get involved and determine if the new activity has some substantial impairment to that current leasehold, and we'll try to work around it through negotiations and through conversations. And if we simply can't, obviously the Board of Land Commissioners can determine which way to go from there. But those comments are considered very valuable. There can a lot of weight put on them by the board when we're going forward with the use. And if we are supplanting an existing use and it's just not worth staying there like a coal mine per se, then there are options to buy out that grazing lease. There's options to provide surface impact payments like the representative mentioned, compensation back to the lessee for any loss of that leasehold. But I think to your point, that consent piece is extremely important, and it's really not found anywhere else in our use cases. It's specific to this special use lease situation that existing user has to consent to the new use.
Okay, just so we are managing time, do we have anyone online that wants to testify on this? And then is there anyone in the audience that wants to testify on this bill? Okay, seeing none. Committee, any further questions for our panelists? Welcome, Senator Landon. Okay, sounds good. Seeing none, public comment is closed. Thank you so much. Committee, what's your pleasure? The bill's been moved. Is there a discussion on the bill? Senator, we're happy to get you up to speed on our conversation.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I like this bill, and I apologize I wasn't here for the entire conversation, but I look forward to visiting with all of you up on the floor and working this bill forward. So thank you.
All righty. Any other comments before we vote? All righty, committee. As you can see, I'm a co-sponsor. I think that, there are some issues that might arise, but I think this is a good place to start as far as providing that necessary management of some state lands that are already being utilized, and some of those resources may be being damaged. So let's do a roll call on the bill.
First of all, Madam Chair, did we have a second on that?
It's seconded, sure.
Thank you. House Bill 54, Senator Guru,
Excused?
Senator Landon.
Aye.
Senator Salazar.
Aye.
Senator Schuler.
Aye.
Chairwoman Ellis.
Aye. All righty, and I'll visit with Representative Larson, make sure we're getting this bill presented how you'd like it to be. So, all righty, the next bill on our agenda is House Bill 72. Welcome, Representative Summers.
Go ahead. Madam Chairman, fellow committee members, I bring you House Bill 72, Hunting License Application Funds, and ask for your favorable introduction. There is an increasing need for wildlife habitat improvement, hunter access, and wildlife crossing projects. House Bill 72 allows an unsuccessful hunter an unsuccessful hunter applicant the opportunity to donate his submitted fees to either the Wyoming Wildlife Natural Resource Trust Fund or the access account that was created last session with an increase in the conservation fee. And just to remind you of that fund, what that did was split 85% went to an access account with that conservation stamp and 15% went to wildlife crossing projects. And donations are just that, entirely voluntary. And Madam Chairman, I will walk you through the bill. And there were some amendments in the House, some of which were mine. Madam Chairman, if you go to page 2, I'll just kind of read some of this. An applicant may elect to provide that any fee under this section is refundable if the applicant is unsuccessful, or portions of the fee as provided in this subsection be retained and deposited by the department in the Wyoming Wildlife Natural Resource Trust income account or the Game and Fish Access account created by Wyoming Statutes 23-1501H as determined by the applicant. The department shall provide information on the application that the applicant may elect to make a contribution. The department shall allow the applicant to contribute the entire amount of the fee or select a portion of the fee to contribute in specified whole dollar amounts, $20, $50, $100, or other amounts specified by the department not to exceed the amount of the fee. Any administrative expenses incurred by the department for donations to the Wyoming Wildlife Natural Resource Trust Fund shall be reimbursed to the department by the trust income account. And really, that's the bill. The whole idea behind it is, as I've worked on the Wildlife Task Force and we've worked over the years, we have found these little ways to give really the public and hunters the opportunity to donate. Remember we did it with the license registration. You can do a check off, and you can buy a license plate, and so it's just one more little way that we can. And actually, these little ways have added up into some fairly substantial dollars. So, Madam Chairman, welcome your questions.
Thank you. Representative Summers, questions for the bringer? Senator Schuler?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a question at the very bottom of the page 2, when it talks about the administrative expenses that might be incurred by the department for donations. First of all, I think this is a great idea. Do you really feel like that there will be a lot of administrative headaches to do something like this, where we send funds this way and that way? I don't know. Maybe this question's for Director Nesbitt too.
Welcome, Director Nesbitt. You're welcome to address that question and then add any other comments in the interest of time.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Senator Schuler. So no, there wouldn't be a significant amount, but because of the way that our federal match works, when we send money to another agency, we have to be able to recover those administrative costs to make sure we don't have a diversion of funds. And that's the only reason that's in there. The only thing I would add to what the majority floor leader had to say is that, this could be another significant source of revenue for those specific purposes that he identified, which we know are priorities to Wyoming people. We refund the 3-year average of the amount of revenue that we refund back is $47 million a year. So, even a small percentage of folks that choose to do this could mean another significant source of revenue to either the WWNRT or the difficult to access public lands account or wildlife crossings. So a great opportunity, I think.
Okay, Senator Landon, did you have a question?
I do. Madam Chairman, thank you. And this is for the representative. Love the idea. Really think it's terrific. Walk me through your thinking to add the Wildlife Trust here and not just access.
Yeah, sure. I think the reason is we don't have any, obviously we're going to put some more money hopefully into that account, but we don't have a real stream of money that goes there. And I think about our, what used to be our side of the state, on the western side, and the access isn't the issue.
Yeah.
The access is wildlife habitat. And so I think hunters on maybe my side of the hill might be more interested in contributing to wildlife habitat projects, perhaps, than hunter access projects. And that's the reason I kind of did that.
Follow up?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having served on that select committee, it's one of the most amazing, best things we do in Wyoming. And so really applaud that. I hope that we can continue to educate so that our hunters and all the rest of our citizens realize what that Wildlife Trust Fund is doing and what it stands to do if we can accomplish what you just mentioned, Representative. Hope you agree with that.
Representative Summers?
I agree.
Okay. Any other questions? I have one. So I'm looking at page 2, lines 14, 15, 16, and 17. The $20, $50, $100. I like statutes that we don't have to revisit all the time if we need to adjust those amounts. So I'm wondering if, and I'm just kind of thinking out loud, would it be appropriate if we were to delete maybe the specific mention of the $20, $50, $100 and just say they can select a portion of the fee in whole dollar amounts as specified by the department? That way, if you need to make adjustments through rulemaking, you can, and we don't have to come back as a legislature to start tinkering with this. So I'd be curious to know what your thoughts would be on maybe making that adjustment in the bill.
You know, from my perspective, that's fine. I just picked, I picked those amounts. It was actually in discussion with a co-sponsor that was a senator, you know, that, hey, let's put some, you know, we don't necessarily want to donate the whole amount, but maybe it's whole dollar amounts. I'm fine with that. It's up to, you know, I would be interested in the department's take. But.
Director Nesbitt?
Yeah, Madam Chair, from our perspective, that's manageable either way, either the way it is now or with that amendment.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments before we let you go? Alrighty, who in the audience would like to testify on this bill? We've got 1, 2 different entities, and then how many people online? Nobody. Alrighty, so either come up separately or together, it's up to you, but welcome to TRW.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Jess Johnson with the Wyoming Wildlife Federation. I'll keep this really brief. I know pressed for time, but we're very in support of this. Any of these sort of voluntary donations is we just see only upsides to. I can tell you personally, I put in for about 9 tags a year, and sometimes I draw them all, but in the times that I don't, I'd be very, very happy to donate that on. And being from someone from the center of the state, I'll have to sort of toss a coin, I think, maybe to figure out where I want to put it, but I just really, really appreciate every little bit that we can put into those accounts, both for WWNRT and the access.
Okay, questions for Ms. Johnson? Thank you so much. Welcome to TRW.
Name's John Burrows, and I'm with the Wyoming Outdoor Council. Ooh. Is it on? John Burrows with the Wyoming Outdoor Council. And short and sweet, we think this is a wonderful bill. It's good for recreation, it's good for conservation, it's going to be good for our state's wildlife, and it's not going to cost anybody anything that they're not willing to pay. So we thank the sponsors for bringing this. We urge your support. Thank you.
Any questions for the Wyoming Outdoor Council? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony today.
Thank you.
Alrighty, with that, public comment is closed. Committee, what would you like to do? The bill's been moved and seconded by Landon and Schuler respectively. Committee members, I would move that on page 2, line 14, delete the word "in specified." Line 15, delete the words "of $20" through the rest of the line. Delete all of line 16. On line 17, delete the word "amounts" and insert the word "as." So the line would read, starting back on 14, select a portion of the fee to contribute whole dollar amounts as specified by the department. And maybe a conceptual amendment if I missed like an "as" or "in" or something like that, but that would be it. So it would really just leave it up to the department to set those amounts. That way we don't have to revisit this in the future as a legislature if they need to adjust. Senator Landon?
So, Madam Chairman, I really appreciate where you're going with this because I think that makes a lot of sense. Two things. I don't want it to hang anything up. I don't think it will. And then the other thing that it struck me is just that when we get it up on the floor, with the amounts in there, people can visualize what you're talking about. So as long as we can explain that well enough and say, you know, it could be 20, it could be 50, it could be 100. If we just leave it open, I don't want people to think, well, I'm gonna have to give all 200 of that to the, you know, that's my only caution there. Maybe I'm the only one that, but I do like the idea that you can just change it in rules and regs that way.
Yeah, Senator Lane, I think that's a good point. Maybe us bringing the amendment in that fashion will lead to that conversation and that understanding, but I mean, ultimately, I'm just trying to think of, if there's a scenario 10 years from now, I just don't want the legislature to have to come back and start looking at these amounts. Any other comments on my proposed amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That amendment's passed. Is there any other amendments, committee members? Seeing none, we'll do roll call on the bill.
House Bill 72, Senator Grew, excused. Senator Landon. Aye. Senator Salazar.
Aye.
Senator Schuler.
Aye.
Chairwoman Ellis.
Aye. Alrighty, House Bill 72 has passed. Thank you, Representative Summers. Senator Landon.
Just a couple things wrong with that bill. I know we just passed it out, but those co-sponsors on the Senate side, and the fact that I didn't get signed onto this bill, that's the only thing wrong with this bill.
We will let Senator Landon duke it out over who gets to present this bill. Alrighty, the next item on our agenda is we have governor appointee nominee individuals. The first one we have on our agenda is the Gaming Commission. There's a reappointment, Commissioner Broussard, and then a new appointment would be Ruben Rithaler. And so if we can cue those individuals up and welcome Ms. Solai from the governor's office.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, thank you so much. Emily Solai, Special Counsel to Governor Gordon. And I have the privilege today to introduce each of the governor's appointees to the Gaming Commission for your consideration. So Madam Chair, if you could advise who you would like to begin with. Was it Troy Broussard?
Correct. Let's do the reappointment first.
Great, thank you so much. So Madam Chair, members of the committee, Troy Broussard, as Madam Chair noted, is a reappointment. He is being appointed to his second term to the Parimutuel Commission. He represents District 5 from Park County. Mr. Broussard presently serves as the Vice President of the Commission. He was appointed in 2017. He has been Senate confirmed twice, first to complete the close of a partial term of an appointee that left their post with the Commission, and then for his first full appointment thereafter. He has been a commissioner while legislation was adopted allowing for skill games and online sports betting. And so he has worked on building and administering those new regulatory schemes in Wyoming. Mr. Broussard was born and raised in Lafayette, Louisiana. He attended the University of Louisiana, where he received his degree in international management. Thereafter, he obtained a master's degree in international management from the American Graduate School of International Management. And prior to these academic successes, Mr. Broussard served our country. He joined the Army and served with the 3rd Rangers overseas. Mr. Broussard previously worked as the director of the Boy Scouts in Albany and Laramie counties. He has also served as the director of the Boys and Girls Club of Park County, and he presently resides in Wapiti. He has been the manager of the Double E Ranch in Wapiti since 2007. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Solai. And Mr. Broussard, welcome.
Hello, thank you.
If you would like to offer just any remarks about why you'd like to be reappointed to the commission, we welcome you and look forward to hearing your thoughts.
Well, generally speaking, I went to the Capitol in 2005 and witnessed our government, and it was a very impressive thing. And I thought when I could have the time and the ability to be a part of our government in general, I wanted to do that. And that's why I'm doing this today.
Questions from committee members for Mr. Broussard? Senator Landon? And I don't know if my mic's working. I don't hear it. We're breaking all of our mics. Can you hear that one? Can you hear that? Okay, there we go. Senator Landon?
Well, thank you, Madam Chairman. Just to kind of get a couple of questions started this morning. Mr. Broussard, thank you for your willingness to serve on the commission. It's been a lift. I guess I'd love to hear from you regarding the last couple of years. We've asked an awful lot out of our gaming commission. It's changed dramatically. I would just love to get your observations and a a feeling for where you think this thing is.
Mr. Broussard?
Yeah, Madam Chairman, Commission or Committee, yes, it's been, when I first joined the commission, it was a learning curve to learn about the parimutuel and horse racing specifically. And I think just when I got up to speed, a lot of things changed. But the heavy lifting went to Charlie Moore, I believe. But I am learning fast, and I am hoping to contribute in some kind of way moving forward. My hope is that the legislature doesn't approve a whole lot more gambling or gaming. Let us catch up.
Okay, follow-up questions for Mr. Broussard? Or Senator Salazar, or, sorry, Landon, follow-up? Senator Salazar?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, I also want to thank you for being willing to serve. Just a general question, Mr. Broussard, do you have any thoughts on gaming commission members being allowed to participate in gambling while they're on the commission?
Mr. Broussard?
Well, that's a very broad question. So I'll just answer in a general way. I'm a Christian, I'm a conservative, and I'm a leaning libertarian. So I trust my fellow citizens to do the right thing. I'm not a fan of legislation or laws or rules just for the fun of it. I think they need to solve a problem. That's my general stance, sir.
I'll have a follow-up on that. So maybe to address some of my concerns, I appreciate your perspective. I think, maybe where we maybe disagree is, gaming across the country tends to be a highly regulated industry just because of its background. So maybe to put a finer point on it, do you play any of the skill games or the historic horse racing machines, or do you place wagers on sports or live horse racing, for example, that occurs in the state of Wyoming?
Madam Chairman, I don't own race horses. I don't have the app for sports wagering. I invest in the stock market. That's about the bravest I can be. But no, I don't see myself being part of that. Not because I look down on folks that do it. That they can do with their money what they want. I'm a little too skittish to do that. I actually took statistics in graduate school, so that's kind of why I don't gamble.
Mr. Broussard, I think you and I are very similar in that regard. I think the concern, though, is, if we had a commissioner maybe play a machine and win a $500,000 payout, that would reflect poorly on the commission in the state of Wyoming. So that think that's my concern. Would you share that as being a concern?
Well, I'd like to be that person, but statistically, it's not probably going to happen. But I know the odds of that, but I also know individually the commission makeup, and they're all folks with a lot of integrity and good reason to be on the commission. And again, I'm going to default to their decision making for that. If the legislature wants to make laws, I don't get involved in that part. I just make rules and enforce, be part of the enforcement of them. That's up to you guys' judgment. It wouldn't affect me either way, in any way, if that were, brought into law.
Senator,
I don't have to sell a horse or acknowledge that I own anything, because I don't.
Senator Landon?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Broussard, thank you for those answers. I want to get back to a couple of things and get your observations about where we are. I'd be really appreciative to know what you think the major challenges are right now. What do we have left to do, and what do you feel like is the bigger lift or two? And then finally, is there anything that the Travel, Recreation, and Wildlife Committee can be focused on that might be helpful to the commission?
Mr. Broussard?
again, I don't get involved in the beginning of all this. I'm involved in the end. So again, what comes down from the legislature is what we have to sort out and make sense of. And I understand why things happen the way they did. We're trying to gain revenue in different places and try to expand certain things for certain people's businesses, and that's great. But at the end of the line is the rule making and appeasing everyone. And at this point, I believe that Charlie and the paid folks involved, and then the commission to some extent, have weathered the major part of the storm and are now ready to launch and make sure that things going forward are legitimate and honest, and we keep out the bad players. That's sort of my job.
Madam Chairman, just,
Senator Landon, follow up?
yeah, thank you, Mr. Broussard. And that making sense of things, making sense of that legislation, I struggle with that too, just so you know, so.
Yes, sir. Well, I'm not sure what commission I'm joining at the moment. I think it's the pari-mutuel still, maybe the gaming commission. We'll see here pretty soon.
Hopefully the Senate File 7's moving, so we'll get that sorted out. Are there any final remarks or any questions other senators would like to offer? Senator Salazar?
Mr. Broussard, thank you for your service to the Rangers. Appreciate it.
Cool.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony today.
Thank you for your time. So
Alrighty,
do I just push a button and I'm out?
I think so.
Okay, thank you.
Alrighty, Ms. Solai, would you like to present Mr. Ruben Rithaler, if I'm pronouncing that correctly?
Yes, Madam Chair, and I believe it's Ruben Rithaler. So members of the committee, Ruben Rithaler is a lifetime Wyoming resident. He represents District 7 from Weston County. He was just appointed by the governor last week, so he's a new appointee. Mr. Rithaler is the third generation to own and operate his ranch in Upton, Wyoming, with his wife Shelley and his granddaughter Jocelyn. He owns and operates the Upton Logistics Center and Rail Park in Upton, Wyoming. Mr. Rithaler has a lifelong commitment of service to the state and to his community. He has served on the Weston County District Number 7 School Board, as well as the Weston County Fair Board and the Upton Economic Development Board. Mr. Rithaler has also spent over 40 years serving on the Powder River Rural Electric Board, the Wyoming Rural Electric Association, the Basin Electric Board, and the National Rural Electric Cooperative Association.
Alrighty, do we have Mr. Rithaler online? Mr. Rithaler, if you can turn on your camera and turn on your microphone, and welcome to the TRW committee. If you'd like to
Thank you,
offer-
Madam Chairman.
Yeah,
Can
if
you
you'd
see
like-
me?
We can, and feel free to offer remarks to the committee and let us know why you're interested and willing to serve on this commission.
Well, first off, I'm a little bit, like I said, I didn't know if it's pari-mutuel or gaming commission. I guess we'll decide, the legislature will decide. I was brought up to speed kind of by an outgoing commissioner, and then the governor called me and asked me if I would be willing to do it. And my views on gambling is probably not the best. I'm a world-class gambler. I'm in agriculture, and we gamble hundreds of thousands of dollars every day on weather, commodity prices. And what I do know about gaming is I can make a small fortune playing blackjack, but unfortunately I have to start with a very large one. And so I know gaming and gambling is kind of a diversity thought about in the state of Wyoming, but I think I would like to see it handled correctly so we keep the graft and corruption and the crime and everything else. And hopefully that never shows up in Wyoming, but I think if it's done properly, it's probably good for the state of Wyoming, but it has to be handled properly and with some caution. It just can't be opened up the floodgates. And the Wyoming legislature, of course, like there again, I guess I'm not really familiar with how the commissions work, about as close as I've been to friends and neighbors have been on different commissions. My wife was a University of Wyoming trustee. And of course, to be a commissioner, you still have to rely pretty heavily on your people that are day-to-day business, and the commission just kind of sets the general philosophy and gives them the backing of it. So I don't know what else to say. I'd be very green, very open to learn. I'm not, maybe not I went to University of Wyoming. I think I could pick up pretty fast, and I would like to help the state of Wyoming on an emerging industry. So I don't know what else to say.
Thank you, Mr. Ritholler. That was great. Questions from committee members? Senator Schuler?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, I just looking at or hearing about your resume and your background, if you've served on a school board, you can serve on anything, right? So anyway, appreciate all the things that you've done up in your neck of the woods. I guess my question would be, knowing that you're brand new and you're green, do you feel like that the Gaming Commission and the powers that they have will be able to help us, get through these first rocky years and still be a real important economic driver for the state of Wyoming?
I would like to think so. Of course, being new, I don't know exactly all the rules and regulations that are in place. That would be the first place to learn. Like I say, I'd have to lean pretty heavy on the administration to give the direction, and then hopefully the philosophy of how it's presented is the thing that the commission can do and add to, and make sure it's done properly. So.
Okay.
I don't know if I answered your question or if I rambled, but anyway.
I think she was happy. Senator Landon?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Ritholler, thank you for your willingness to serve on this commission. My curiosity, you being a newcomer, what did you hear when you reached out to those going off the commission or those on the commission? What did you hear in terms of what the challenges are and what the hurdles are going forward?
Mr.
Well, excuse me, did I interrupt somebody?
Oh, and Mr. Ritholler, it's kind of our custom for every question and response to go through the chair. So just out of habit, I said Mr. Ritholler to call on you. So please, you're fine, sir. Go ahead and feel free to respond to Senator Landon.
Well, there's some different schools of thought. It was the pari-mutuel, and of course, that's what I always thought it was for years. I heard some remarks that they didn't want the horse racing industry to be pushed aside for the skilled games and gambling. That was one of the things. And I think there's probably room for both, but that was probably one of the things I heard the biggest part of. And in all transparency, I probably should have got addicted 60 years or 40 years ago on narcotics, because it's been way cheaper than horses, I will guarantee you. But having said that, I do not have race horses. I do cutting horses, performance horses, rope horses. I've never been involved in horse racing. I try to keep them more under control. But anyway, I think there's a room for both. I mean, it's you can't overlook what's been there for something new coming in. So I think there's room for everything to be set aside.
Thank you. And then Mr. Ritholler, I did have a question. Do you currently gamble? I mean, do you like playing the historic horse racing machines or the skill machines, or, do you have any interest in placing sports wagers? We now have that online available. Do you do any of that activity?
No, I do not. Like I say, my gambling is limited to bigger dollars, and in agriculture, it's always a gamble. Probably about everybody in the state of Wyoming is a gambler. I don't know if everybody's with the gaming and the skills and those kind of gambling, but it's no. So I know you asked a question, you think about regulation, regulatory issues with the commission. I guess I would be astounded if somebody was on the commission and doing something that benefited themselves. And so but no, I do not gamble that way.
Thank you, Mr. Ritholler. Any other questions for Mr. Ritholler? Thank you for your service. I, just kind of made some notes about your background, and, I've got a lot of experience in rural electric issues. So it's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you for your willingness to serve on this commission, and thank you for being with us this morning.
Okay. Thank you very much. And thank you for your time. And I apologize if I stepped on you, Madam Chairman. So
You're good. Thank you, sir. Have a good one.
thank you. Do I just log out or do I hang around? What do you need there?
you can turn off your camera and you're free to go for the day.
Hey, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Bye-bye. Ms. Alai, any other comments? You're good. Okay, thank you. Let's see. So I didn't, oh gosh, I already failed. I had a script and I didn't read from it. So we're going to assume that they swear and affirm by the testimony that they gave before the committee that they were being truthful. So with that, committee members, I would entertain the following motion, to move forward the names of Troy Broussard and Ruben Rithaler to the position of gaming commissioner to the Senate for confirmation. Is there a motion in that regard? Moved by Senator Schuler. Seconded by Senator Landon. Any discussion by committee members? Senator Landon?
Madam Chairman, just a general comment. I so appreciate the citizens of our state stepping up to help us on these commissions and boards. It's getting, I think, more and more difficult to find good people to do this. And I think we ran into two of our great Wyoming citizens this morning who are willing to do this work, and really look forward to working with them to do a good job in this sector of our state. And so I look forward to that. Thank you.
Any other comments by committee members? Yes, okay. Well, let's do a roll call vote on those two nominees. And absent objection, I'm doing them together. If you'd like them done separately, we can do that. But I thought for convenience, go ahead and call the roll call.
Can I add, so this roll call will be for both at the same time?
Correct. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Okay, roll call for governor's appointment to Gaming Commission. Senator Guru. Senator Landon. Senator Salazar. Senator Schuler. Chairwoman Ellis.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. The next item on our agenda is hearing the appointments for the outfitter and professional guides. And to do their introduction, we have Mr. Luthi from the governor's office. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Randall Luthi from the office of Governor Mark Gordon. I think it's my first time before the committee, so I'm glad I just have to introduce. So first of all, thank you for your interest in the various boards and commissions. Senator Landon, I think you said it extremely well. The governor certainly appreciates those citizens that are willing to volunteer their time, and he also appreciates your interest in the various boards and commissions, because it really is what makes it work. People that are willing to take the time to do it. So with that, I'm going to bring you the names of another three great citizens. And Madam Chairman, I'm just taking a wild, I almost said certain kind of guess, but just a wild guess that you'd like to start with a reappointment. Is that correct?
It's a great guess.
Right. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I present to you Jeffrey Smith, who has already served on the board of Outfitters and Professional Guides. He is a longtime outfitter himself, over 29 years. He's current board member and chair of the State Board of Outfitters. He's a past president of the Wyoming Outfitter and Guide Association and a current board member of the Wyoming Outfitter and Guide Association. He is from Sundance, and he would, of course, be representing Outfitters and Guides on the board. And I believe he is on Zoom, ready to take your questions.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, are you online?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Do you have a video or just audio? If you have video, it's like a camcorder looking thing on the bottom of your screen. I think here you are.
Yep.
Welcome, Mr. Smith. We can hear you. Feel free to, before we do that, I failed in our last round. I need to ask you the following. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give before this committee will be the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Welcome, and feel free to offer some remarks and tell us why you're interested in serving on this board.
Well, Madam Chair, Senators, I would be very interested in serving again. I already served one term on the state board. I'm currently chair. I just feel with my experience and the years that my wife and I have, full-time outfitted in the state, what I can add to the board to upcoming applicants who are trying to get into this line of business, a lot of gift of experience and knowledge to be able to pass on and to be able to oversee this, outfitting industry, which is a huge industry and, part of the tourism in this state. So I would really like to be able to serve again and be able to pass on a bunch of knowledge that I've gained through the years.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, and my apologies. You are the reappointment. So I apologize for
Yes.
stating my question as if you were new to the board. Questions from committee members? Senator Schuler?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a quick question, since you're a reappointee, hopefully. What were your thoughts as far as working with the Wildlife Task Force? How did you feel like that went, and what can we do to further the actions of that task force?
Mr. Smith?
Senator Schuler, Madam Chair, that, I've been involved, well, obviously with being on the Outfitters Association board, I've been heavily involved in and participated in the task force. There's a lot of complicated issues, from licensing to everything, from trespassing. But I think it's been a really good tool, and I'm hoping that everything that comes out of this task force, which I don't have no say in, I'm not a task force member by any means, but I'm just hoping with, the experience of the people that you have put on that task force, that, the Senate and, the House will take in consideration and move forward with what the task force comes up with. Because I feel there's a lot of people on there that have tons of experience and are looking out for the best of Wyoming.
Additional questions? Senator Landon?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Smith, I'm curious, what are the big issues in your industry right now? What are we seeing out there? Just from a 30,000 foot view, you've been in the industry a long time. What are you seeing these days?
Mr. Smith, sorry, Senator Landon. Didn't mean to cut you off.
Senator Landon, Madam Chair, that is a good question. There's a lot of issues when it comes to the outfitting business, from, licensing is a huge topic to us, we don't feel that every license in the state should go to a non-resident. I think it should be, proportionally resident based, but, there's lots of issues from the grizzly bears, back in the back wilderness camps. I do have wilderness camps in grizzly bear areas. From the licensing to the grizzly bears to predators and whole, the decline of the mule deer is a huge issue. I do think, licensing and that kind of stuff in this task force can be decided to further, basically to, you need to, with this task force and looking ahead, it's just for conservation is a huge deal. The outfitting industry is all about conservation, obviously, because, this is basically the wildlife of Wyoming is basically how an outfitter is making a living, is providing, an enjoyable experience for somebody that's willing to travel, tons of miles to come into the state and, to go with a guide and to go out there. It's not about harvesting an animal. It's the total experience that, we're able to provide and that kind of thing. So there is a lot of issues from, like I said, the grizzly bear to just, all safety, safety throughout the industry and that kind of thing. And then so safeguarding the customer with having qualified outfitters and qualified guides is a huge deal.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Follow-up questions or additional questions from committee members? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Smith, for being with us today. We appreciate your testimony.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Have a good day.
You too.
All righty. The next nominee on our list would be a new appointment, and I believe this person's here in person, so it's Teal Wyckoff. Before we move to her, Mr. Luthi, would you like to introduce this appointee?
I would, Madam Chairman, members of the committee, present to you Teal Barbara Wyckoff. She is a new appointment to the board. She represents the public. She has been serving on the board since June. She is a member, she actually works over at the University of Wyoming at the Wyoming Geographic Information Science Center, WIGIS. And I noticed in her background was something I think very appropriate for what often becomes a very exciting board, is that she was a former firefighter. So I think she's able to put out fires. So with that, Madam Chairman and members of the committee, I ask Teal to come on up and answer your questions.
Thank you. Good morning, Ms. Wyckoff. Welcome, and feel free to introduce yourself and offer any remarks about why you have been serving and why you're interested in continued service on this commission. And my fellow co-chair knows I haven't had enough coffee. He's been serving with me for a while. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give before this committee will be the truth?
Yes, Chairwoman, I do.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. I appreciate being here. I do think that I represent the public as my role on the board. I got my letter from Governor Gordon last June, and so I have had an opportunity to sit in with the board for several of our meetings. And so I've really had an opportunity so far to learn, but a little bit about my background. I have been in Wyoming for about 17 years now. I have absolutely made this my home. I do have a background in a variety of natural resource management areas, from firefighting, yes, absolutely, right up to a master's degree in wildlife management, as well as my career, which has really been focused on supporting the best decision-making that we can have in our natural resources and conservation of our state. Now, I recognize that I am here in a personal role, but I am also an avid hunter, fisherwoman, and general recreationist in our state. And I am absolutely passionate about an opportunity to ensure, that is really the point of this board, right, is to ensure the safety of our public as they engage in an activity like this. So we are here to license our outfitters and guides. And so ensuring the professionalism, the safety, and the integrity is really why I'm here. I am representing that public that we are serving as that industry. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions from committee member Senator Landon?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. First of all, thank you for your willingness to serve on the board. What have you learned since June that you didn't know?
Ms. Wyckoff?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have learned quite a lot since June, as you can imagine, being new to this. I would say that one thing that I have absolutely learned in working with my colleagues, including the member that you just met online, are a lot of the components that go on in running, the outfitter industry. I have sat in on our training that we offer for our outfitters at every opportunity. So I have sat through multiple trainings. And the reason I do that is because there is an incredible wealth of information that can come from our outfitter board members. We have collectively, I believe, over 100 years of experience between all of them, all the way from talking about things like how to actually manage accounting, all the way up to safety, when we're talking about horse management, going into wilderness areas, working in bear country and things like that. So I have learned an absolute lot about really the nuts and bolts of the industry, and where I, as that public representative then, can provide my input relative to, what does that mean as an outsider or as that public person, as I listen to and understand the questions that are being asked of our new outfitter applicants. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Additional questions for Ms. Wyckoff? Senator Schuler?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, you have quite a background, and I'm just going to ask, I know this is a little off the topic of outfitters, but it kind of isn't really. What are your thoughts on how we are managing right now? I know we have some issues with our mule deer, but even our grizzlies. Could you just talk about either one of those for just a minute?
Ms. Wyckoff?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for that question, Senator Schuler. In terms of general thoughts, I have been involved in wildlife management, really for the whole time I've been here, but definitely since I started my master's work in 2011. So quite a while. And as you can see from my paperwork, I will talk about mule deer first because it's what I'm most familiar with. When I started that work in understanding migration, and that whole world, we were at a point in our state where a lot of this information was new to us. We were working on the science of understanding, where are these animals? How are they really moving? And it has been incredible to me to watch how rapidly we have gained this understanding. I am extremely impressed by how far we have come in terms of being able to manage that species. And I absolutely appreciate, being from a science background, I absolutely appreciate the role that we are allowing the science, in understanding long-term drought on these species so that we can mitigate that. And in terms of the grizzly bear topic, I think that I would just say that, I absolutely appreciate that the state is working on understanding and on managing them as a species. I know that, we are in a situation where their range is expanding rapidly. Absolutely, right? And we are beginning to need to integrate, and this definitely relates to outfitting, in terms of that expansion is certainly beginning to impact some of the areas that it was not a consideration up until very recently. And so I would say, I appreciate the fact that that we are on top of this and we are talking about management, but also, how to make sure that we, as both from an outfitter board perspective, as well as from a public, that we work to make sure we understand how to live with a species like that, right? And how do we do things appropriately and safely, and how do we mitigate, right? Is there a public education component to managing a species like this? And I think there is. Thank you for that question, Senator Schuler. Thank you, Chairwoman Ellis.
Further questions for Ms. Wyckoff? Probably one, I'm sure you've been watching the work of the Wyoming Wildlife Task Force. One of their big recommendations they handed off to the legislature was dealing with the Big Five and changing the hunting license allocation from 80-20 to 90-10. And so I'm just curious if you've been monitoring the work of the task force, if you think that, how their work is kind of coming together, and just kind of your general thoughts on some of the issues they're tackling.
Sure. Yes, I have. I think that from my perspective and my position as I'm learning about all of this, I absolutely appreciate the task force. I appreciate what they are working towards, and I have so far supported the efforts that are going on there. Yeah. Thank you for that question.
Any other questions for Ms. Wyckoff? Seeing none, thank you for making the drive over. And I don't want to disparage our online presenters. I think one of the wonderful benefits of having the Zoom option is that you don't have to drive 7 hours to Cheyenne for these, very quick hearings. But please know we appreciate you making the trip over the hill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Mr. Luthi.
Yeah, appreciate it. Members of the committee, Madam Chairman, I'd now like to introduce you to Joe Candelas of Cody, Wyoming. He is also representing the public on the board. Just to touch a little bit on his background, he was educated in Montana, but I ask that you not hold that against him. He has, since that time, worked for at least 20 years with Tanager Beverage Company in Cody. He comes with a wide interest, and I think you'll enjoy your interview with him. He is coming via Zoom, so again, I turn him over to you and the committee for some questions.
Thank you, Mr. Candelas. Thanks for turning on your camera and your microphone. This hearing is on the issue of your confirmation to the Wyoming Outfitters and Professional Guides Board, which you have been nominated by the governor. Before you begin with your remarks, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give before this committee will be the truth?
Yes, Madam Chair, I do.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Yeah, just a little bit about myself and why I'm interested in this appointment. I believe I bring a unique perspective to the outfitter board as a avid sportsman, not affiliated with an outfitter, and a representative of the public and the public sportsmen in Wyoming. that being said, I have many friends that are outfitters in this state and others. And I understand what it is to kind of run an outfitting business and some of the challenges that they go through. I'm a very conservation minded and deeply cherish the resources we have in Wyoming. And I believe this is one way of me giving back for all the great things I've enjoyed as a resident in this state, especially as a sportsman. I believe deeply in science-based conservation and the use of science to influence wildlife decisions. And I think as a business owner, I also value the benefit that the Wyoming guides and outfitters bring to the state of Wyoming, and the need to curate that and develop that. Our hunting heritage is very important to me, and this is one way of giving back to ensure that we have that for the future. So.
You, Senator Landon has a few questions.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Candelas, thanks for being with us this morning. I'm curious about the Western Bear Foundation. And it says here that you're the founder of that organization. I'm curious about why you founded it and what's the purpose of the foundation?
Mr.
Yeah.
Candelas.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. Senator, I'm heavily involved with several nonprofits that work in the conservation and hunting space. And several years ago, we myself founded the Western Bear Foundation to advocate for bear hunters and for bears in general, specifically ensuring a future for bear hunting and making sure that there was a representative out there to work with bear hunters to ensure that we have that hunting bears would be something that we could do into the future and fight against all the things going on in this country right now to end some of our hunting heritage. And then on the conservation side of things with our foundation, we do a lot of work, especially in Wyoming. We've done a lot of work with conflict mitigation with grizzly bears, especially around Park County. We've funded a lot of conflict mitigation efforts in game and fish owned lands around Du Bois and in the Bighorn Mountains. And most recently, we've worked with the department and the University of Wyoming on black bear research in the state of Wyoming, where we funded collars and we're doing some spatial data and getting some DNA hair samples to figure out how many black bears we actually have in the state and how they use the landscape. So we work across the United States. Wyoming is probably the best state that we work in right now, just because of our relationship with the department and some of the opportunities here. So.
Thank you.
Follow up. Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Candelas? Seeing none, Mr. Candelas, I want to thank you. You're free to offer some additional remarks, but I just want to emphasize to everyone presenting today, this is a really nice opportunity for us to get to know who you are. Hopefully it wasn't too scary of an experience. So thank you for taking some time to visit with us this morning. It's pretty easy to testify, isn't it?
Yeah, it's great. No, Madam Chair, thank you. I was a little nervous. I've never had to do something like this. I don't mind public speaking, but this is a first for me. So I apologize if I came across a little nervous.
No, you're great. Thank you so much for your testimony this morning. Thank you, Mr. Luthi. And you're free to turn off your Zoom.
Thank you.
Alrighty, committee. We've heard from the nominees. Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would like to move that we forward the names of Jeffrey Smith as a reappointment, Teal Wyckoff as a new appointment, Joseph Candelas, I hope I said your name right, also as a new appointment to the position of Outfitters and Professional Guides, and for the full Senate for confirmation.
It's been moved and seconded, absent objection of doing all three of them together. Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote on the block of nominees.
Governor appointee for Outfitters and Professional Guides, roll call vote for Jeffrey Smith, Teal Wyckoff, and Joseph Candelas. Senator Guru, Senator Landon, Senator Salazar.
Aye.
Senator Schuler.
Aye.
Chairwoman Ellis.
Aye. Okay, that has passed 4-0 to 1 excused. With that, we have finished all the agenda items on our list today, and so our meeting is adjourned.